Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Vitale from RPG Site, and today we have gameplay footage for you guys from the upcoming RPG Marvel Midnight Suns. Joining me today, I've got a couple people that you might recognize from the TetraCast podcast from our website. We've got James Galizio
Hey, folks.
and Josh Torres.
Hi, everyone.
And joining me, I also have Scott White, who is another contributor to the site.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining us, Scott. So,
Of course.
a couple weeks back, the good folks over at Firaxis Games and publisher 2K reached out to the site, letting us know that they had an opportunity for us to go out and visit them over at their studio in Baltimore, Maryland, and just go see footage of their upcoming game. Marvel Midnight Suns was announced late last year in August and was originally slated to release early in 2022. Not too long after the announcement, they mentioned that they were going to push the release date back, and that has now recently been announced to have been set at October 7th. And Scott here was able to take the opportunity to go out to Baltimore and visit with the studios on site to go see the studio, to go see the game hands on. And he's captured a lot of footage for us to kind of give us a real good in-depth preview about what to expect from this game when it releases later this year. So without too much more delay, I'm going to hand it off to Scott just to kind of set the stage of what we're looking at, what sort of game this ends up playing like, how much footage we ended up we're able to go hands on here. So, Scott, just tell us about your time visiting the studio of Baltimore over at Firaxis.
For sure, for sure. So, the good folks over at 2K and Firaxis invited a number of us, of media folks out to get a nice, good, long chunk of hands-on time with Marvel's Midnight Suns, along with pulling back the curtain on some new characters and big bosses and kind of the layout of the game that hadn't been revealed just yet. By the time you hear this, you will know everything we know as well. But yeah, we got to basically have free reign. We were given the controller right at the beginning of the game, and we had 5 hours roughly to play through as far as we could go. Usually, which took us up to, I would say, probably one of like the first big boss fight. Um, with the game, and let us have free reign exploring this game's hub area known as the Abbey, along with a bunch of the different heroes we got to try out. We a lot of the ability to try out the combat, which is one of the big kind of contentious issues surrounding Midnight Suns. Um, but
So
yeah, it
paint
was it was a lot
paint a
good
picture
time.
for me. Like, so when you arrived at the studio, did they just have a bunch of demo booths set up and just kind of let you go? Did they give you like a presentation as you started to kind of introduce how the game plays, or was it more just you learn as you went hands on, got the controller in your hands?
Sure. So we got there early in the morning where they had a number of stations set up. Everyone got their own PC to play on. We were playing a development PC build of the game. And after we got kind of all set up, then we got a little tour of Firaxis Studio itself. We actually got to see Sid Meier's, and he said hi to us, so that was
Oh,
very
that's nice.
cool. And yeah, walked around the XCOM side of the studio because it's the XCOM team, the Enemy Within team, or Enemy Unknown, excuse me, uh, that is working on Midnight Suns. So we got to see kind of their studio and set up and see where everyone's working, and then they brought us back to kind of the meeting room where all the computers were set up. And at this point, Jake Solomon, the creative director behind the game, sat and talked with us, kind of told us about their approach to it, kind of the design direction, and gave us a bit more of a look in the game that we were going to be playing. Just kind of took us through what we can expect for the locations of this game's three acts, the bosses, some of the corrupt heroes that you will be kind of fighting against as the big bads in the game, and then kind of comparing it to how it stacks up to the original comic book run, Rise of the Midnight Suns SONS, which is the comic book story arc that this is roughly based on. They took liberties, they've adjusted it, but it's roughly based. It's Firaxis's game take and update on the 1992 story arc from Marvel
Yeah,
Comics.
so I had kind of two like through lines of questions, and you just answered one of them. One of them I was going to ask like, is this an original story? What is this based on? Does this tie into the movies, the games, the Crystal Dynamics game, or anything? But you just kind of talked about how it's an adaptation of a comic series. The other question is a little bit more obvious about the footage that we've been watching here. Obviously, this is from the developers at Firaxis behind some of the games that you mentioned, the Sid Meier's game, Civilization, XCOM, Enemy Within, and Enemy Unknown. Uh, so just kind of talk us through kind of what sort of game this is to play. Obviously, I'm seeing elements here of like deck building. I'm seeing elements here of like strategy and some turn-based combat. So just kind of walk us through like what kind of what we're seeing here on the screen.
For sure. So your combat is held pretty much to a small kind of arena, where at any given time you could be fighting off 5 to 10 inward between there of enemies. Usually around the 5 to 7 range, and in these arenas, all your powers and all your moves are tied to cards that are drawn every turn. Each hero has access to 8 cards at any given time. Well, not at any given time, but basically each character has a deck of 8 cards that your hand is pulled from. And from there, you can utilize these moves to hit enemies, buff your attacks, shift people around, um, or things like that. It's a wide. The arena isn't grid based like you would expect, like an XCOM, like previous XCOM games. So when you move around, you are limited to the amount of times you can move. And at least in the demo, in the areas we played, you only could move a single character a turn. You had different attacks would physically move you into place, but manually moving characters could only be done single character per turn. And with these moves, you could knock enemies into each other. You could knock them into furniture. You could also utilize uh, this resource called heroism, which is generated by a bunch of your card attacks, to also throw things at enemies or kick boxes or benches at enemies to do additional damage. And you could do
Yeah, I
those.
see the heroism meter in
Yep.
like the bottom right of the screen, kind of building up
Right.
as you take actions.
Yeah. So those are used to use your stronger attacks. Like there are attacks, like Photon Beam, for example, that require a certain amount of heroism to cast, or interacting with the environment costs a single heroism point. So heroism is the big resource to kind of budget and balance.
I'm interested in. I don't know if you got a chance to see this in your time with it, but let's say in this arena, is it like fairly confined, or or is there does it allow for like say moving up the staircase and making the battle more vertical, or is it just like more of a visual like set piece? Just to set that like you're
Mhm.
inside of the Sorcerer Supreme's like mansion.
Yeah,
Um,
in this situation, the arenas are fairly enclosed.
mhm.
You don't have much room, at least in the areas that I played. Um, there wasn't much in terms of, they were rather condensed, and you had
Okay.
enough room to move around, but they weren't huge.
But this isn't like XCOM where you're like constantly hiding behind cover. You're always out in the open trying to be more aggressive,
Right.
as opposed to XCOM, you're trying to be more careful.
Exactly. And that was one of the big points that in the presentation and my interview with Jake really wanted to highlight was, in XCOM you are fighting the superior enemy. You're fighting you, so you have to worry about taking cover. You have to worry about the positioning, so you are on the high ground and the superior enemies are um, hindered. In this regard, the fantasy of being superheroes, you are the superior enemy. So there's, in XCOM, like you mentioned, you have to worry about your attacks might miss, your attacks might do this. It fluctuates the amount of damage. Firaxis has made the point to really hit home that these are superheroes. These are incredibly powerful beings. Your attacks don't miss. You
Iron
don't
Man doesn't miss.
Exactly. Iron Man doesn't miss. You don't have to worry about doing all this. The attacks you do all have a set damage that they do regardless. There's buffs and things that you can use to increase the amount of damage, but they'll always do the same amount of damage. Um, you'll always hit. It's more about just that constant action, and the art direction was very much making everything feel very dramatic. Like all the moves, I during my playthrough, I never felt that the moves I was seeing was very static or repetitive or reused from one hero to the next. Each one, you zoom in on the move, the character does something, whether it's Iron Man firing off of his repulsors or Doctor Strange summoning an axe and then just landing on someone's head. It's all very dramatic and action packed, very heroic.
So, like, are we just seeing at the very beginning of the game right now, at where it's starting off? How far into the game are we seeing
Yeah,
at the moment?
yeah. So we picked up the game straight from the tutorial right at the very beginning of the game, and was basically allowed to play as far as we could get in the 5 hours
Mhm.
provided. So the rough time area that a lot of people got to was around the 5 hour mark was the first main boss fight. Um,
What do you think
but
of the story so far? Like, obviously, you're still very early on, but like, well, what did you notice? What caught your eye?
So for a lot of the story, from what they described and everything, my main focus was really diving into the gameplay aspect because I know I'm going to play it. So I
Mhm.
didn't want to spoil myself and have
Okay.
to sit through a lot of the story. Plus, I wanted to see as much as I could, especially with the systems. But one of the things that I was really surprised by and I wasn't expecting, and up until this point they hadn't really talked about, was you'll be fighting some of the bosses are corrupted versions of um, heroes and anti-heroes that you've played. So the main premise is Lilith, the mother of demons, is basically trying to take over the world and basically do
Mhm.
antagonist stuff.
Yeah.
So you are on screen right now is the character creator for the Hunter, which is the first create a character custom character in like a Marvel game. And the
Okay.
Hunter is the child of Lilith and the only person that is has been able to kind of vanquish or deal with Lilith 300 years in the past. So through Doctor Strange's magic and other characters' magic, so you were able to revive the Hunter, and you're the main linchpin in succeeding against Lilith, who has corrupted Venom. You have corrupted Scarlet Witch, who was revealed as a boss from this game, but also you will get Scarlet Witch. She was another one of the playable characters that was revealed at the event that was later in the game, so I don't have any footage or knowledge of how she plays.
Okay, that's awesome. She's one of my favorites. I'm
Yeah,
really excited about that.
yeah. Corrupted Hulk. Lilith has Hulk on
All
his her
right.
side, and
Okay.
Shout
their
shout out
designs
for this
are
Bob
really cool.
haircut.
Oh yeah, the haircuts and character creator really impressive. You're not gender locked. At
Okay.
the when you start a character, it says choose a body type, so you can
Mhm.
do a female presenting or male presenting body type, and then the hair, eye color, facial hair, everything like that can be on whatever body type you want.
Awesome.
That's
Um,
always cool.
yeah, so that's very cool. We are coming up to the option I chose for the hair. um it's majestic, but yeah,
Oh
the
This
yeah,
one?
there
volume
we
the
go.
volume
That's very good. I want the shampoo that they're using.
oh yeah, the volume is let me I'm gonna skip to when I finally created my character. There we go, there's my majestic
There
hunter
we
bro.
go. I like it. So
Yeah.
what sort of abilities, since the hunter is a new hero that they're introducing, it's a created character, like how do you go about customizing the hunter's skills? Do they come like pre-equipped and you'll learn it? Or do you actually like have any sort of like control over what skills they have mastery over?
So what Firaxis and the team talked about was there's strangely, which I wasn't aware going into the demo, and I don't think they had really talked about. There's almost a morality uh, scale here.
Oh, okay.
where you have like your neutral answers, you have kind of your light answers, which you're a good guy, and then more shadow, evilly like things. And those will play into specific kinds of cards that you will have access and be able to use to. So there's your neutral cards that you can use regardless. There's light base, which is more healing and like good stuff. Um, from what it looks like, and then stronger dark, like kind of evil. I don't remember what it was considered, but yeah, like your good, bad, or neutral alignments. And those will allow you to access different cards, specific cards later on into your
Oh,
Do you
deck.
have
interesting. So it's sort of like the infamous thing where they try to do like if you're on the good guy or the bad guy side, you have like different like abilities available to you depending on
Yeah.
which alignment you lean. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right. So
You mentioned early on, so I'm kind of curious about two things. I'm curious about like how
sure.
progression works, like as you go through the game, like how do you increase, or I'm assuming it's to some extent you increase the strength of the cards available, have access to stronger tiered abilities, like how the deck building aspect works. But also you mentioned early on that the about the hub, the Abbey, and I'm wondering kind of like what ties this. Well, how does the story progress through gameplay and like tying like the combat counters, stringing them together? So I'm wondering, like, if you've got footage that you can show us about the Abbey gameplay, or something,
Sure.
the stuff outside the combat that we saw earlier.
Before we skip to the Abbey here, what are we seeing here?
Yeah, so right now this game does have a photo mode, but what's really cool is you can design your own comic book covers
Oh
um,
wow.
using
I
different
love this.
characters. You can change like the text on it. You can change the logo. You can do a lot of stuff. Right here, you have the hunter looking his dapper self
Mhm.
in front of Iron Man, Robbie Blaze, or Robbie, the new Ghost Rider, and Doctor Strange. But what's really cool is so in the Abbey there are like ancient, beautiful paintings hanging on walls and whatnot, and in any room you can use a resource called gloss, which is just kind of a frivolous resource to strip whatever's on the wall, and then you can put any sort of photographs that you've taken on the wall. So you could hang corny custom made comic book covers in everybody's room,
That is
or
excellent. I love it.
I spent a good number of minutes just playing around making this comic book cover, just chuckling with all the options. And one of the things that they had said with this having come from a older comic book series with 1992, they wanted to really channel like late 80s, early 90s comic aesthetics. So like Iron Man, it's not the super smooth like organic armor. It's much more of like the modular armor from like the old 1992 Iron Man. It's those design aesthetics, and it's very much a 90s vibe that they're going with.
Yeah, they had the cover like for a Black Hole Sun, I believe, at the reveal, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, is there any sort of like different outfits, different costumes you can obtain for the heroes
Yeah.
throughout the game?
Yep. So with the hunter, you have a bunch of costumes, and his skins actually have stat bonuses and things tied to them
Okay.
that you'll unlock through the story. But everyone else are purely cosmetic, and they wanted to stress this. There's free costumes and premium, real money only costumes.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Okay.
And this was probably one of my biggest issues with the game that they showed. And
Hmm.
granted, it could still tweak, but there is a marketplace where you buy premium currency. It's a resource that can only be bought with real money. And this resource, this premium currency, can buy premium currency only skins. Can't get this currency just by playing the game in any sort. I got confirmation on that. But what's really surprising, and I brought this up to the developers and kind of the PR people, they locked Spider-Man's black suit behind paid money only currency.
They know what the people want, and they know what they're willing to pay for it.
Well, my immediate thought here is like when you first said paid costumes, I'm like, like we see that in a lot
Right.
of Japanese RPGs all the time. There's buy this costume set, but the fact that they're tying it to like this currency, like you can't just go to the whatever PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, whatever, and buy it. You have to get out the credit card, get some premium currency, go in the game, pay US dollars for golden gems or whatever they're called, and then buy the costume. It just seems like
Yes.
convoluted, and like it feels a little bit slimy. I'll just be honest. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
have
it's
good vibes right
really
now.
yeah, it's really weird that for whatever reason they decided like having DLC outfits is, I mean, it's kind of normalized at this point,
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
fact
It's
Right.
that
like
it's
it
like
is what
that
it
you
is.
buy the currency and then you use that currency to buy the costumes, why is there that extra step? There's like literally no reason for that other than to obfuscate how much money people are actually spending.
At the very least, like just to be completely, just clarify it for the people. There's no random elements to it. What you buy is what you're getting. There's no like gotcha system or loot box system associated. Correct?
They have said there's not.
Okay.
That they're not going to do that, but I I I have this
You,
sinking feeling, and this is totally just on me. They said they aren't going to do this, but there are so many different resources and collectibles and things you need to get to unlock things or craft things that I hope to I hope it doesn't come to this like 6 months to a year from now where 2K or whoever is like, okay, we're going to start offering this, but there you get cards by opening these things called gamma coils, which the animation has Tony Stark cracking a pack, very loot box like animation.
You
And
know. Okay.
so this is the gamma coil. So Tony cracks a pack, flashes,
Dang.
and then you have blank cards
Uh
that
huh.
you flip over, and then you choose one to get
Is this the
from the
primary way
three.
you get new cards?
Yeah, this is how you get new cards. So you unlock them. There's also like side quests you can do with characters, like when you become friends with them, that you can unlock cards that way. But a majority of your stuff will be cracking these gamma coils, which will give you the option to choose from a number of cards.
now, how do you unlock gamma coils? Because I'm trying to thread
Yeah.
the needle here. This is loot boxy, but also in a game that's designed around deck building. This is very traditional, like booster packs
Hmm.
or whatever. Like
Right.
that's not nefarious on its own. So
Right.
it kind of depends on how the systems around acquiring gamma coils works.
So, as far as I played, the only way I was able to get gamma coils was by opening special locked chests or by completing missions and like side missions. You'll usually be awarded one gamma coil.
Oh, okay, so it's earnable in game to unlock the ability to acquire new abilities for your deck. So I think that jives, but it's I know you can only
Yeah.
report on things that you've seen in your 5 hours
Right.
with the game and the answers that you were given when the developers were candid in saying that they're
Right.
still working on the exact way it's going to be implemented. So you can only kind of go with what you were privy
Right.
to. So just trying to make that clear.
Right. So just with the gamma coils and then the mysterious keys that will unlock chests kind of scattered throughout the Abbey. Then there's also essences of a bunch of different stats, which then you use to craft items. And then there's another resource that you get, which unlocks special quests that you send heroes on to do um, just on their own, intel caches. So there's just a a lot of random things to collect that just scream at some point we want to monetize this. But as of right now, the games director Jake Solomon, 2K, has said we are not doing that. It is strictly cosmetic. You will not be able to buy gamma coils. You will not be able to buy essences. You will not be able to buy any of that. So I'm hoping that that remains true. Like I,
If they leave it so that the premium currency that you talked about earlier is just for cosmetic outfits, even if it is a low
mhm,
blow that they took Spider-Man's black outfit and put it in that premium shop, if that's truly what it is, I think I can be okay with that.
yeah. Um, I hope we don't have a repeat of Marvel's Avengers,
Hmm.
because I remember them saying that that would only be cosmetic, and then down the road they're like, okay, but now we're going to offer XP bonuses and things like that. Not to say that they aren't. Not I have no reason to believe that this is what 2K is going to do or Firaxis is going to do down the road. I do not think I have any insider knowledge. They were very clear that this is not going to happen. It's just I just see how they could very easily sell packs of gamma coils.
Right.
Right.
Walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's kind of hard to like,
Well,
even if
I'll
they're
see.
saying this isn't how it's gonna
Right.
be. It's like
Mhm.
I understand from what you're explaining why there's the trepidation.
Yeah,
So,
it's just yeah.
yeah, when you were collecting a card earlier from that from Stark, and you got like a duplicate of a card, it said something about like that's how you power up like the individual cards is by getting duplications
Yes,
of them.
correct. So you can upgrade your cards at Blades Anvil. The Yard is called, where you can, if you have multiple copies of a single card, you can kind of fuse them together to boost it. Um, so that is the so not only are your gamma coils where you can select one card, and you can upgrade so you can select two, and you have a few more options. But so the gamma coils are not only used to build your deck, but you also need the coils, the random cards from the coils to upgrade your deck, like
Mhm.
just your base
Your
card,
general power level,
your
essentially.
general, right, the strength of your cards.
Yeah,
So
and upgrading them, I assume, will it. I assume, of course, they'll power them up, like increase their effectiveness. But have you? Did you notice if like powering them up also like maybe would reduce like some sort of like magic cost or heroism cost associated to that?
so the upgrades will really change depending are really tailored to the card itself. Like some will increase the knockback, or like you said, reduce the heroism cost to use it, or just a flat boost to damage. So it does fluctuate a bit, and one of the mechanics that you get a good deal later on, I was told about the 25-30 hour mark, is the ability to mod cards and add additional properties. But
Oh,
that was not present in the demo, and from what they were saying, it's a ways into it, and roughly about halfway through the game, because they are saying Firaxis was saying that they are aiming this to be a 60-hour game with a huge focus on replayability as opposed
mm,
to end game content. So there is a bunch of difficulty levels. You have like casual or easy, normal, hard, and then hard 1, 2, 3, and then extreme 1, 2, 3, and then ultimate 1, 2, 3. So there's a
wow.
lot of difficulty levels. And they really want you to play through this game a lot, which kind of piqued my interest. Like, not piqued my interest, but kind of made me raise my eyebrow because because they are touting this as like a 60-hour RPG.
I'm just
Did they give
enjoying
any
that
sort
you
of?
were that we're
Yep.
watching your
Sorry.
character just chilling at the creek here.
Yep.
Yeah. Did they give any sort of indication of like, do you get like better rewards from higher difficulty levels?
Yeah, so your characters will gain more experience and various other things with each higher experience level. We were locked behind uh just normal difficulty. It does appear that you can, as you play, if you're doing well, the game will say, hey, you've unlocked this other difficulty, this higher difficulty. Do you want to switch to that higher difficulty? I did have that trigger when I completed a mission. It's like, hey, good job. Do you want to, you've unlocked hard one. Do you want to switch to that difficulty?
Not to
Mm.
interrupt you, but I saw there when you went to that little war table to select a quest, it said that this quest rewarded in a common gamma coil. So that
Yeah.
seems fine to me. Like, okay, I want to do this quest because I just want to see the quest content, but also it'll give me the opportunity. This answers my earlier question about how you progress, how you get stronger. So it's starting to kind of come into place how the whole game is like strung together.
Yeah.
There's no sort of like timer that the XCOM series did where like, oh, you only have so many missions to do till I forgot what the threat was, but there was like a definitive game over state in the XCOM games that they did. If you like lingered around too long.
Yeah, I didn't get any sort of indication like that. Like, I did see that you will need to complete some side missions or some like little side quests before the next main quest will open. I did see that, but I didn't see complete X quest before within X turns or anything like that. No.
It sounds like
So
for
how do you?
people who like to be exhaustive, take their time, see everything.
Right.
There's really nothing pushing back against that sort of play style.
Right.
So, so
How do
this
you
is
feel
more
about like the general like chemistry of characters, like their combat abilities? Is there any sort of like a tactical element where you use a skill to like reposition an enemy towards like someone like in front of someone else so they can fire off another ability? Like do you feel that it's more like is it leaning towards that kind of flow, or do you think it's really more about just trying to fire off as many abilities as you can and environmental interactables?
So it seems like the flow of combat is finding characters with abilities that synergize well, and then also characters with abilities that are like compatible with the environments that you're fighting in.
Hmm.
Now, like for this quest here, we see that you're fighting with Captain Marvel and Blade. Was that like
Hmm.
specific to like for this quest you get these characters, or do you have some say in that?
So you once you unlock more characters and everything, you do have there are quests that you have to take certain heroes,
Which
but
makes
for
sense.
the most part, it seemed like with exception of the hunter, you do have a lot of leeway and choice into what heroes you take with you on story missions. And even on like side quests, you don't have to take the hunter with you. So
I
And
kind of like that.
yeah, it worked out well.
Obviously, this won't have like the permadeath and add the XCOM games. But what happens if your like a character falls in battle? Are they unavailable to use for like a subsequent mission for a certain amount of time, or are they okay to go for the next mission?
So they can get injuries which will affect them in future missions, and I'm a little I was a
I enjoyed the
little
pinball there.
confused. Yeah, exactly. I was a little confused like how the whole injury thing worked, because I think the tooltip that pops up afterwards said it's like if a hero gets hit but not knocked out when they're low on health, that will cause an injury for the next time you bring them with you or something. I'm not super clear, but one of the injuries that I sustained during my playthrough was Magic, who was one of my main characters. I loved her. She is all about battlefield control and moving enemies around. Um, but she lost the ability to move on her own or move manually. She could still move via attacks and whatnot, but you couldn't manually move her. So that was interesting, but that was the extent of the um, injuries that I sustained.
Normally in games like this,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it's implemented here, but like if a character is injured, they can just sit in reserves for some
Mhm.
number of outings or something until they're fully healed, or otherwise you can just keep playing with them at some sort of penalty, which it sounds like is what happened here with Magic.
Yeah, if they get knocked out in combat, you get a revive token added to your hand, which you can use for a certain amount of heroism that will revive them up to half health or so. But I think that can only be done once per character. I'm not sure. But one of the things that stuck out to me with the combat is so enemies fall into pretty much two camps, at least the ones I fought, a minion and an elite. And minions hit us a single time and they go down. Elites actually have health bars and will take time to, like, you have to stack on the damage to actually take them out. But what's interesting is, in general, you have three cards that you can play in a turn for your heroes. Whereas with all the enemies, every enemy that's on screen gets to act. So keeping their numbers down by taking out the minions in order to prevent the enemies from ganging up on you, it like becomes really important, especially with the harder quests. And enemies will just kind of keep spawning in waves. There is a limit, but you'll just every turn basically you'll get a notification incoming reinforcements, and then more enemies will come. So it kind of gets repetitive in that regard.
Hmm.
Well, at that point, you said like you have to do some side missions, but then you can just progress with
Hmm.
the main story and see how just the narrative might take you to different locations or have you fighting different enemies. So, is it more like round based, or because I saw there that you were able to act several
Yeah.
times in a row with Captain Marvel, and then
Hmm.
is there any sort of indication on whose turn is it next, or do you get to act with your other heroes before the enemies get to act?
Yeah, so it's you go. So down in the lower right, you'll see card plays, redraws, and moves. So card
Hmm.
plays are how many actions your team gets during their turn. And
Okay.
once the card plays are done, it swaps over to the opponent's turn, and every enemy that's on screen gets their own action. So
So on your
if you
round,
have
basically the card play is across all your heroes.
right,
It's not like Blade gets a turn, then Captain Marvel gets a turn. It's player turn, enemy phase.
correct.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep.
Who was like your like I know you mentioned Magic earlier, but was there like a certain team comp or certain other like characters that really stuck out to you with the way they played or their role in the story during your time with it?
Sure. So my main team that I rocked most of the time was Hunter, Magic, and then Spider-Man. Once you unlock him, he has cool attacks that if you take down an enemy, you can then chain to another enemy. Like if you're familiar with Magic, there's keywords. Like a lot of cards have keywords, whether it's life steal, knockback, quick, um, chain. They're like all these different things that can pop up in card effects. Luckily, it has a little tool pop up when you hover over a card. It'll tell you
Yeah, we
what
saw a
all
couple of
the
those just now.
things. Yeah, I really like Spider Man. Kind of his animations were very cool. Um, his kind of nimble movement, his being able to. He had a good move called Spidey Sense, which gave you 2 heroism and reduced the cost of all attacks in your hand by 1 heroism point. So that was a really good one. Um, so I like his kind of movement and also his ability to just pump up my heroism pool. So him,
Right.
Magic,
It sounds like that's
and
the sort
Hunter.
of thing that would really synergize well with from what I'm seeing here, Blade seems very offensively minded. So something that allow
Hmm.
like you have Spider-Man do a buff like that, and then Blade can act more often, potentially. It'll be fun to see. Obviously, with 5 hours, you can't quite find the perfect synergisms, but it'd be interesting to see like what sort of things develop as like really, really good comps so that end up becoming necessary as you take on like your ultimate 1, 2, 3 difficulties and things like that.
Oh yeah. And they did confirm that there is a new game plus. That they said that characters transfer over, but they wouldn't go into any detail past that. Like they weren't talking about it. But they
Yeah.
did confirm is new game plus.
We saw there just a bit ago in the footage that we were watching a UI pop up that said Blade leveled up. Is that
Yes.
like so independent of strengthening the cards the characters each have, just a standard set of like experience and attributes as well?
Basically, when you level up, from as far as I could tell, it increases their health and defense. Um, and that's about it. Because like offensive wise, it's all about the cards, and leveling up plays no factor in increasing the damage of cards. So I think it's leveling up just improves your health and reduces the amount of damage you take.
Yeah, I saw there that it said Hunter level 3 had 71
Yeah,
health previously. I guess that
yeah,
makes some sense that if your defense, it does make sense that your defensive attributes would be tied to the character, and then if your actions are tied to the cards, that's your offensive attributes are tied more towards those coils and strengthening those up. I think that could be an
yeah,
interesting like progression, interesting pair of progression systems.
yeah.
Yeah, earlier before this battle happened, you were going around the Abbey and you were speaking with the characters. Like I remember during the reveal of this game, there was some sort of like relationship, almost social link esque like system you could undergo with each of
Hmm.
the heroes. Like I know when you talked to Miss Marvel, like I think you spoke to her for the first time. It's like after you spoke to her, then she's like, "Oh, nice, she's available for your combat party." Did you notice any other sort of like bonuses or any sort of like differences when you?
Yes.
Uh,
It is very you get bonuses and buffs and different adjustments by befriending characters, and they, depending on your answers to them, they will like you more. Because so there's friendship levels, and as you grow friendship levels, you'll unlock buffs. It is very, very much social link. Honestly, the Abbey and like going on missions feels like two totally different games.
Huh. By the way, that's Captain
oh,
Marvel, not Miss
yeah.
Marvel.
Oh, sorry. I get them mixed up all the time.
I was only
Thank you.
reminded of that because we saw as Scott finished the mission, he got the coil and but also like some gloss bonuses and like and some I guess some new add-ons for the
I was
magazines,
actually
and it
going to
said
ask
Captain
about
Marvel right
this,
on there.
what we're seeing right now, because the Abbey is kind of looks very lifeless at first when you enter it. I
Yeah.
was going to ask if there's any way to, like, spice up, like, your surroundings at the Abbey, and this is what we're seeing here.
Mhm.
So gloss is not only used to, like, replace the posters with your own cheesy posters you make, but also the decorations. Are all the decorations that you can put or upgrade, are they strictly like cosmetic only, or are there any gameplay bonuses associated with it?
It seems like only cosmetic, and so gloss is this random thing that's used for like anything. So you use it to unlock various cosmetics, like equipment and just kind of new shirts and whatnot for your hero. It's used to take posters off the wall. It's used to buy desks and various things for your room. It's just kind of whatever. My hero is currently entering his final form. Um, I decided I wanted to buy some aviator sunglasses for him and a cool headband.
Okay,
Um,
I dig it.
so yeah, so that was what I ended up
That's
rocking.
funny. There's also like rarity levels associated to the cosmetics as
Yeah,
well.
that you use gloss on. So it's very confusing. There's lots of resources, and here's a look. Actually,
Okay.
I actually don't think I can show this aspect in on video, but basically there's the hunter's cosmetics will give you different passive abilities and whatnot. Um, None of them are showing up, but
Well, I'm
you
looking
could
at
read them.
the requirements that are popping up. Some of them said to like
Yeah.
progress further in the story. Some said you had to
Hmm.
research certain things.
Yeah, and you can have different outfits for both your common just hangout clothes and also your battle outfit. But I decided to rock the aviators and sunglasses for both my cat combat and Abbey outfit.
And can you also change like the casual outfit of the other heroes besides
Yep.
your own?
Yes, you can.
But
And
it's
you
but
Awesome.
can
it's
toggle it. And you can toggle it where they'll change clothes like every day. Like they'll be wearing different things every day.
Wow.
Kind of a cool little touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
that's just
lot
an
more fleshed out
interesting
than I
like
thought.
approach because like if
Hmm.
if I was a developer that was like making a Marvel game, I don't know if I would immediately go into so many like casual what do they do between missions like social link type stuff. But it seems like here they've put a put a nice emphasis on that.
And I assume that a comic book people will get a kick out of this, because I assume, like, when you interact with them and about their past and stuff, I'm sure there'll be references to the comics they're from
Hmm.
throughout it.
Yeah. That, that's one thing like that they stressed and it became very apparent. The team that is working on this game loves and knows comics. Like they are giddy about sprinkling in cool little Easter eggs and nods to retro comics and old comics and often overlooked comics, everything like that. So expect get your Easter egg hunting glasses on is what
Oh,
I'm is
I'm
Oh,
all
I
sure
I'm
saw
this
I, s- I
game
saw
will
a couple
fill with it.
proper nouns just being mentioned in that conversation there that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure some eagle-eyed people would see what those are. And I know what those are.
yeah.
No, but it's been really cool to have you show this game to us. Like I watched the gameplay footage that they showed uh, like September of last year, like a month after they revealed it. And obviously that was early on in development. This obviously is a playable slice of the game. And at the time of recording, they'll also have had another trailer revealing the release date for October 7th. So it'll be interesting to see once we're able to go witness that for ourselves. But yeah, it's an interesting look to a sort of game that's coming out in October that I don't know, like I'm not a big Marvel fan, but I'm looking at this style of game and it just seems kind of like a different sort of thing that I think is kind of inspired. I'm still a little bit like got some trepidation about the costuming thing from earlier and about how
Hmm.
and like whenever there's so many resources to keep track of, I'm not saying it's inherently bad, but it's just like how delicately balanced are there? Is it going to just be like UI like a UI just mess of all the different things you have to
Yeah.
keep track of? Because I remember people sharing those like initial screenshots of the Crystal Dynamics game. And it's like, why are there so many currencies in Marvel's Avengers? Like, it can be done well to have and feel cool to like manage all those resources. And resource
Hmm.
management is at the heart of RPGs. So it'd be interesting to see like once people are able to go on a long time with the game, how they feel about how it ends up being implemented.
I went into thinking this was XCOM with Marvel characters, with some weird card-based system tacked on. It turned me off. Playing through the demo, it is it is not XCOM. It is nothing like XCOM. It honestly reminded me more of like Metal Gear Acid or Mega Man Battle Network. It,
Wow.
it the so just the fact of like kind of reframing my thoughts on like what this game is trying to be or like what this game is was so important to me than thinking, oh, it's XCOM with cards and Marvel characters. It is not. It's very
Mhm.
much not. And I think if Firaxis can kind of really demonstrate and show that this is not XCOM with cards. It's its own thing, and they've taken a lot of care into making it feel and play really good. Trust Firaxis. They know their strategy games and strategy RPGs, and they impressed me with this one. They said that each hero will have 20-ish different abilities that they can swap in for their deck throughout the game. And the hunter will have more because he has the different kind of the light side cards
He's
that
the
he
wild
can
card.
use. Yeah, he has a bit more around the 40 mark, 40-ish range of combat abilities. But yeah, it's got a lot of cool things. I'm anxious to see how much like how different all the abilities are and like how soon you can get those abilities, because there are some restrictions. You only have 8 cards, or each character only can have 8 cards as part of their deck that your hand can pull from. And then there's further restrictions, like you can only have like it makes sense, so you can only have 2 copies, I want to say, of any card in your deck, in a character's deck. But from there you also are limited, like the hunter, you can only have 4 attack cards, because then the other 4 need to be support or healing cards, which it's like that rubbed me a bit wrong. Like I'd rather just be able to,
Slot what you want.
yeah, within reason. Like I understand the limit of 2 cards, 2 of the same card, but having further restrictions on no, you can only have 4 attack cards or things like that. That rubs me a bit of the wrong way, but
Well, like
I'll
dealing with
see how it
limited
goes.
resources or certain restraints is, I think, kind of at the core of at least my favorite RPGs. I'm thinking like
Hmm.
sometimes that just manifests in certain, like, you can only equip 2 accessories. Which two do you equip? Or you're equipping armor in a Souls game. How much can you equip before you're at heavy weight limit? Things like that. So
Yeah.
usually working within some sort of boundaries is just inherent to RPGs. Finding out a good set of gear, in this case, cards, abilities that
Hmm.
work within the boundaries of the game. You can't just slot the best abilities in every slot or whatever without some sort of drawback. And figuring out how exactly what fits your play style. I don't know. I enjoy that sort of stuff and kind of tinkering and that figuring out exactly what is the most effective way to go through it.
I
Right.
know, I know we're winding down a little on like on the coverage and stuff. We're certainly leaning towards it, but like with the footage that we're seeing right now, there was definitely a point where uh you were trying to like craft something, and the duration was 1 day. Was that 1 day in game or 1 day real life?
No,
Uh,
that's in game. So
okay.
you're
Josh watching for the rest of us.
so the
Yeah,
game is
seriously.
split up into 3 phases. So basically the prep phase, combat phase, and the hangout phase. So before you go on your mission or whatever through the day, that's when you can craft items, you can open your gamma coils, you can set you can tell Doctor Strange to research certain things. And once that's done, then you go to the combat mirror, or the mirror table, which is where you select the mission that you're going to go on for that day. You do the mission, and then when you come back, that's when you're hanging out over in the Abbey. You can talk to the other heroes. You can interact with them. You can hang out with them to raise your friendship points. So it's split into 3 phases, but you can't, like, what I think is kind of stupid is like you can't open more gamma coils at nighttime, like after your mission, like when
Mm.
you've unlocked them. You have to wait until you get through the hangout phase and go to sleep, and then the next morning you can then go and open it. That's a little weird. um But
Okay, yeah, just making sure, I saw the one day, I'm like, 1 day? What did they mean by this?
mhm.
Okay,
Oh
so
no,
but
stamina meters.
there's nothing in the game that relies on, like, real life time.
Right.
Okay.
But thank you, Scott, for showing us
Yep.
some of the footage that you were able to collect from Marvel's Midnight Suns is releasing October 7th. We'll have the new trailer up on the site over at rpgsite.net. And of course, when the game comes out, I don't know if Scott is the one planning to cover this when it releases or another contributor to staff, but obviously we will likely talk about it uh, as we get to the end of the year and get to the end of the year things. And potentially will make an appearance on the podcast as well. Hard to say from this far out exactly how things line up because we are, as we record this, we're ahead of the June kind of onslaught of probably going to get several more release dates that we'll have to figure out exactly how we get those, jigsaw pieces to fit together as we figure out the holiday, or even though it's October 7th is a little bit early, figuring out exactly what we can fit in and what, we only have so much manpower on staff, figure out what we can get to and when we can get to it. But I guess
All
stay
I'm
tuned.
thinking of all I'm thinking of is that one meme with the dude looking at the camera and there's like a dust cloud in the back and it's like, here it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. Did you have any final thoughts about your visit or about the gameplay? Just any other thing you wanted to mention and share with the
Uh,
people?
for sure. It's uh, don't count this out. Don't look at the card system as a detriment. The folks at Firaxis have done a really good job making this game feel unique. It is not XCOM with cards. It's a lot of fun, and I came out of the demo and meeting with the team a lot more optimistic and excited for this game than I did going in. I was very kind of apprehensive about what they had showed so far, just like a lot of fans, and I came out as Stan Lee would say, a true believer. So
Huh.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, and stay tuned for future coverage on Marvel Midnight Suns.